everybody, and welcome back to My Little Pony What Works. You know, it's almost been 2 years since Megan McCarthy's show running took place in the season 3 premiere. After looking back, the consensus surrounding the Crystal Empire was the episode was good, but not great. And for a time I was in that camp. Now, I still think it's a good episode, but maybe it's actually better than it leads on to be. I mean, the show has always been improving, most of the time, and it's no different with each of the premieres. One could easily make a case for the Season 3 opener being better than the Season 1 opener. Hell, with enough respect and research, someone could probably make a compelling argument for the Crystal Empire being better than the Return of Harmony. You know what? I will. The Crystal Empire, in my humble opinion, is a better season opener than Return of Harmony and Friendship is Magic. Ah yeah, I just said that. And in doing so, I'm here to make a list of the 10 things the Season 3 premiere did right. Hence the title of the video you're currently watching. With that said, here are the top 10 things the Crystal Empire did better than Friendship is Magic and Return of Harmony. We have to get this right. Yes, we have to make them see. We can say the Number 10. Better music. Okay, the bottom 2 numbers of this list are of subjective taste, but if I had to choose between any of the 2 music numbers in the Crystal Empire to the 1 song in Friendship is Magic, I'd probably go with the Crystal Empire song. Both songs are better orchestrated, better sung, and more character and story driven. Looking back, Filler's Success is the second weakest song of Season 3, although compared to Behold Princess Twilight Sparkle, it's a godsend. However, it still has pleasant orchestrals playing behind it, better than the early instrumentals of Pinkie Pie's Laughter song. And in the Ballad of the Crystal Pony's case, it does a much better job at delivering exposition and moving the plot along than Giglet the Ghostly ever did. Plus, any song that reminds me of Some Nights by Fun gets bonus points. Number 9. Better comedy. Again, this is more subjective, but I found the humor to be a lot stronger here than the pilot episodes. Never when watching the episodes did I have to facepalm or yell at the screen because some pony was being annoying. Pinky. Megan McCarthy's biggest strength has always been her comedic writing. So even if you find the story flawed, you can still find the episode endearing to sit through because of the humor. We have to get this right. Yes, we have to make them see. We can say the Number 8. Improving animation and art style. This goes without saying. The animation is always getting better, and the staff is always trying new things. While the Crystal Empire still can't hold a T to the window pane scene from Return of Harmony, lighting is improved in the pilot episodes, the use of shadow got better, camera movement improved greatly, and the Empire just looks beautiful. If a place like the Crystal Empire existed in real life, I'd definitely pay big money to vacation there. We have to get this right. Yes, we have to make them see. We can say the Crystal. Number 7. Utilization of Spike. Yeah, here's something people tend to forget. Spike had an active role in the episode. Let's have a look back at the previous 2 premieres. What exactly did Spike do to assist Twilight and the girls in both plots? Well, aside from guarding Twilight and acting as their spam folder in Return of Harmony, not much. Spike seemed to be either pushed aside for the main 6 or did secretarial tasks like filling in Twilight's checklist without having a major effect on the story. In the Crystal Empire, Spike had an active role in assisting Twilight to save the day. Not only did he help Twilight out of her nightmare from the door, getting some development in the process, but he also helped save the day in defeating Sombra, getting the Crystal Heart to Cadence, with a little help from Shining Armor Shrek and Field Days coming back to him. Shining Armor was an Obulus and Ogre player. Let me have my headcanon. So, yeah, Spike being active is awesome. We have to get this right. Yes, we have to make them see. We can say the Crystal. Number 6. A sense of urgency. In the Crystal Empire, our new villain King Sombra is knocking on the Empire's doorstep, ready to take over and enslave the Crystal Ponies once again. With Cadence's Love and Light fading and Shining Armor's shield spell blocked, Twilight, and eventually Spike, are on a time limit to find the plot device to save the day. Now let's compare the sense of urgency to the pilot episodes. Nightmare Moon cast Eternal Night over the land so everyone could appreciate it. Now, long term, it would kill a life and freeze the planet in one spot, but currently, nothing seems to be affected outside of the sun taking forever to come up. No significant change was shown to prove that getting the sun back was urgent, like dying plants or ponies freezing their coats off. Also, there was the fact that Celestia was missing, but it turns out in the end she was completely fine. So there was a sense of urgency, but it never felt like much was at stake in the end. Now let's compare the Crystal Empire to the Return of Harmony. Discord has pretty much won in Part 2, successfully corrupting most of the main 6. So Twilight and her corrupted friends try to head back to the library, and they take their sweet-ass time. Once they get back to the house, the corrupted friends start playing Keep Away with the Elements book. And I'm probably the only one that thinks this, but I found a majority of Part 2, with the exception of Discord, uninteresting. Let me try to explain this. The Discord main 5 got tiresome as soon as they started arguing with each other on the way to the library. And while Discord still managed to pull out a good laugh, my investment towards Twilight's Dilemma diminished because Discord won. The only reason the plot got interesting again was Celestia stepped in and kept Twilight on the right path. In the Crystal Empire, Sombra's presence was always a threat, always looming down the Crystal Ponies, which is why I don't have as big of a problem that some do with Twilight telling Rainbow to keep the spirits of the Crystal Ponies high. As Twilight said, sure.
If the Crystal Ponies find out that King Sombra is trying to take over the Empire again, their spirits are going to be anything but lifted. It won't matter if I find the Crystal Heart. They won't be able to make it work. You have to keep them happy here at the fair.
Keep the fair going and the Crystal Pony spirits high. Done and done.
It's sidelining the rest of the group, but it's understandable to why she has to sideline them. Because of the constant threat Sombra has on the Crystal Empire. Heck, you can even argue that's why Sombra had little to no backstory. Time was of the essence, and Celestia just gave the abridged version of the Crystal Empire's history and magic. What I'm trying to get across is, I'd rather have a plot that wants to prevent shit from hitting the fan, than having the shit hit the fan and go through the tedious cleanup phase.
We have to get this right. Yes, we have to make them see. We can save the Crystal
Number 5, a better challenge. So while the remaining 5 try to keep the spirits of the Crystal Ponies high, Twilight, with Spike's assistance, are facing each of the obstacles Sombra threw at them. First, they were spinding the entrance, which requires Twilight to use the magic she observed Celestia using. Pretty advanced magic to say the least to open the stairwell, and it looks like she was struggling to do so. Next was the door, which also required the evil magic to hold it in place, resulting in Twilight and Spike facing their innermost fears. Twilight's fear of failure and disappointment, and Spike's fear of being sent away. Not only does it present good character development, but it shows Sombra still affects Twilight's plot despite him not directly being there. Then there's a never-ending stairwell. Now, for any other pony, this would be a tiresome challenge, climbing all those stairs from the basement to the peak of the tower, but Twilight gets the brilliant idea to say fuck you to physics and slide up the bottom of the stairs. Inventive and fun. Don't know many unicorns who could do that. Finally, we have the booby trap that prevents anyone from escaping, even by teleporting, which was the moment where Twilight learned the moral of self-sacrifice. Gotta say, Sombra is pretty resourceful, unlike another villain who tried to keep Twilight and the others at bay. I mean, Diamond Moon started off giving a good obstacle by trying to kill the main 6, but then it just went downhill. No pun intended. Manticore attacks them, ends anticlimactically realizing it just had a thorn in its paw. Tries to give them heart attacks by making the trees look scary. Blocks their path via raging river, caused by a sad sea serpent whose facial hair was messed up. Tries to convince some pony to leave the group, to join a group that represents a spot in nature. Are we sure Nightmare Moon wasn't also secretly testing the main 6? I mean, it's not like part 2 of the episode was subtle to begin with, but it feels like Luna was still conscious of her wrongdoings and making the challenges easier and easier. Ooh, that's an interesting theory. Someone get on that. Well, outside of that headcanon, Sombra's obstacles were more effective in keeping the ponies away. So we have a better sense of urgency and a better challenge for Twilight. Gee, it's almost like Sombra is...
We have to get this right. Yes, we have to make them see. We can
Number
save the
4,
Crystal
a
Ponies.
better villain. Yes, I just called Sombra a good villain. Now, for those who have stuck around since November 2012, might remember me calling Sombra a disappointing villain compared to the other big 3, but minds do change over time. You learn to appreciate episodes that you thought were once bad, and shamefully hang your head towards episodes you generally thought were good. The same goes with character concepts. Sombra, I used to think, was nothing more than a puff of smoke with no backstory of how he defeated the original queen or what acts he did to the Crystal Ponies. But then I thought 2 things. 1, having a backstory does not mean you'll have an effective villain. Nightmare Moon was the most fleshed out villain, up until Lord Tyrek appeared, having the tragic backstory. But her methods to impede the main 6 kinda sucked. As I said earlier, the tasks were more of a challenge as Twilight with Sombra resorting to advanced magic to proceed to the next stage. Second, maybe we shouldn't know what he did. The mystery makes him even more enticing as a monstrous tyrant. Hell, if it's enough to drive the Crystal Ponies to flee for their lives or wanting to forget the time Sombra ruled over them, I think it's safe to say the guy is a monstrosity that should never resurface again. Which brings me to...
We have to get this right. Yes, we have to make them see. We can save the Crystal
Number
Ponies
3,
with their
no anticlimax. How come no one talks about this? This was an absolutely satisfying conclusion to the premiere compared to the other 2. In Friendship is Magic, Twilight explains the elements can't be destroyed because, coincidentally, the other 5 ponies she met just so happened to embody 5 of those elements. Nightmare Moon implements the ancient fighting tactic of just stand there and not attack them with Dalek extermination lasers while the plot device does its job. Return of Harmony, Discord got too cocky, not realizing everyone isn't corrupted anymore. And unlike Princess Twilight Sparkle in Season 4, where he initially underestimates the powers of the elements, Return of Harmony makes him out to be oblivious for the last few minutes. In the Crystal Empire, Sombra wasn't cocky and didn't sit around with his hoof up his ass while the plot device was delivered. He actively tried to steal the heart for his own power. He returned to his original form. He almost won! I can't be the only one that's having a heart attack right now!
We have to get this right. Yes, we have to make them see. We can save the crystal.
Number 2. Better story setup. At the end of the Crystal Empire, we get a small hint of Twilight's next phase of development, which has later turned out to be the magical mystery cure spell, thus leading the audience to stay for the finale for the conclusion of the story arc. Friendship is Magic also did this, but it was more of the framing device for the entire series. Twilight was to report back her findings and lessons of friendship to Celestia each episode. In hindsight, this framing device was broken from the start, with episodes having her being told the lesson, or have episodes where she was shoehorned into the story because the framing device said so. Thankfully, it was fixed in the 3rd episode of Season 2 with Lesson 0. Speaking of Season 2, Return of Harmony didn't set up anything story-wise. After watching Return of Harmony once again, it feels more like a season finale rather than a season premiere, especially with the letter reading where Twilight reflects on everything she learned in one season, and the ending moral that friendship may be hard, but it's something that is definitely worth fighting for. Not to mention, the ceremony pays homage to the ending of Star Wars Episode 4. After that, it's back to normal slice-of-life episodes. In retrospect, Lesson 0 feels more like a season opener than Return of Harmony did. Crystal Empire managed to set up a story arc for 2 seasons and capitalized on both. And the number one thing that the Crystal Empire did better than Friendship is Magic and Return of Harmony? Better pacing. I sort of touched on this in my Princess Twilight Sparkle review, mentioning the consistency of each part of the 3 premieres prior, but now I'll go in more detail. Friendship is Magic started off pretty good, introducing the characters, introducing the setting of the series, and eventual conflict the girls will have to face. Part 2 seemed rushed, quickly glancing over each element in the most subtle ways possible, and ending with an anticlimax. Return of Harmony had the best start out of the 3 premieres prior, introducing the villain and slowly, but charismatically, corrupting the main 6. However, it dragged in Part 2, trying to find the elements, dealing with the corrupted friends, and also ending with an anticlimax. The Crystal Empire probably had a slower start than Return of Harmony did in its first part, although it managed to introduce our villain, the importance of the Empire to Equestria, and still had time for 2 songs for character and exposition. Part 2 is where things shifted into turbo, but with good reason. Sombra is right on the Empire's welcome mat, and part of him managed to break inside the love and light cadence was spreading, and exponentially, he grows back to his original form with the Dark Crystal takeover. If not for Twilight and Spike, getting the heart would have been pointless. Improved pacing. The number one thing the Crystal Empire did better than Friendship is Magic and Return of Harmony. And that is why I honestly prefer the Crystal Empire to the others. The story structure was better, the setup of a story arc was better, and there was a satisfying conclusion to the 2-parter. Now, that doesn't mean everything the Crystal Empire did was better. For example, while learning about self-sacrifice is a very mature moral to learn, Return of Harmony's message was a lot stronger going along with the show's themes. And in hindsight, the test was incredibly complicated. But it's not like Celestia's plans were solid to begin with.
Twilight Sparkle, my faithful student. I knew you could do it.
But you told me it was all an old ponytail.
I told you that you needed to make some friends. Nothing more. I saw the signs of Nightmare Moon's return, and I knew it was you who had the magic inside to defeat her. But you could not unleash it until you let true friendship into your heart.
Right. And how much were you willing to gamble that Twilight would find friends who were the perfect fit for the elements of honesty, kindness, laughter, generosity, and loyalty in order for them to stop your sister causing eternal night and killing off every living thing on the planet? Anyways, do you at home think there are other elements the Season 3 premiere did better than the first 2 premieres, or even Season 4's premiere? Post your thoughts in the comments below and start up a discussion. In the meantime, I really gotta start working on that comics thing. Until then, I'm the voice of reason, and I'll see you next time.